it is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Ralf Schimmer and to invite him to speak to you on Open Access 2020, a global initiative to drive large-scale transformation of the subscription system. Ralf.
Well, colleagues, thank you very much for this very kind introduction. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here. I have to get used that this is not a long room, but a very wide one. So it's not easy to have everybody in the view. I'm very happy to be here. I think it is a very timely event, and we had a very good pre-conference meeting, as it was mentioned already yesterday. And I think the theme for this conference to talk about the disruptions in the system is very timely. I have some messages to the disruption, and I think my presentation will contrast nicely to the one of Professor Bernard Montier. He also was about talking about changes and how he wants to disrupt the system. My approach will be quite different. My approach is, I'm not negative about the negotiations, quite to the contrary. I think we have to work through our negotiations as libraries and consortia with the publishers to bring the change that is needed about. And I don't think that we are trapped. We are only trapped in as much as we let ourselves be trapped. So we have all the capacity, we have the key to power in our own hands, and I will tell you a little bit why I think that this is the case. And I don't think that we will lose in whatever configuration we are confronted with the publishers. That's what Bernard Montier also said. I think, yes, we have lost very often. We all have learned our lessons hard, but this is not the end of history. So there is a way out. And OA 2020 is the initiative that tries to set out new goals, to unite ourselves and find a way together to change and disrupt the system. Wait, this is not, I have to use this one. Okay. I want to start with a short description. Open Access 2020 is an international initiative that aims to induce the swift, smooth, and scholarly-oriented transformation of today's scholarly journals from subscription to open access. So to move away from the subscription system, or rather to move beyond the subscription system, but still to maintain the relationships to the publishers and to keep the journals intact, at least for the time being, is the goal of this initiative. The starting point of our thinking is really when we observe what has happened in the open access movement over the past 15 years. I mean, we are talking about 15 years of advocating open access. I mean, the Budapest Declaration was from 2003, the Berlin Declaration from Budapest 2002, Berlin 2003. And we can say that there is a lack of significant progress in the OA movement. Open access, on the one hand side, is exceptionally strong as a principle. You can see that the many resolutions, the policies, the guidelines, the repositories, blah, 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 etc. So there are a lot of indicators that go up where you have higher numbers from year after year. So you can tell a little success story. But when you look at the practice, you can say open access, and you cannot, we have to admit to ourselves, it's still fairly weak as a practice. After 15 years of effort, we have only between 14 and 15% at the moment of our scholarly output that is immediately open access. And what counts more, the subscription system is as prosperous as ever before. The Lehman Brothers crisis, at least for a few years, did more damage to the revenues of the publishers than the collective efforts of the global OA movement ever since the last 15 years. So the key question that we asked ourselves, what does it take to make open access the default in scholarly communication? We believe that we can tolerate to be maybe 15% away from the maximum, from 100% of the research output. But we simply cannot accept being only away 15% from zero, and this is exactly where we are. So we think it's maybe about time to think about a new activation energy. When we look back at the 15 years of the open access movement, we can say that open access has been a story of trying to activate the researchers. And when you listen to Bernard Rentier, his talk was really exactly on these lines. You have to create incentives for the researchers, etc., etc. So what was happening is the researchers was thought to be moved towards open access through a variety of measures such as advocacy, mandates, setting up repositories, and other support mechanisms. The researchers should be moved to open access. The person, sorry, that was a bit too fast, sorry. So I go back, I start the animate. I cannot see it here. So Glenn, why can I not see the animation here? So I'm not synchronized. It doesn't. It's the color. Oh yeah, now I see it. Okay, that was my fault actually. Okay, sorry about that. So the researchers was meant to move, find some orientation along the measures that we carefully set up, and then in the lucky event that this person found what he was searching for and drew the right conclusions, in the end, maybe the result was open access. It could be on a repository site or finding a proper open access gold journal or whatsoever. So a variety of methods. We think, how new activation energy? Why not take our efforts and try to work with the system? Rather than taking the researcher to open access, why not change the system and bring open access to the researchers? So the researchers does not have to be convinced or changed or re-educated or whatsoever. And this is to work with the journals, to use the money that we invest in those journals through our subscription money and use the same money to flip the journals and demand and provide open access. So take all our efforts and energies, work with the journals, flip them to open access, and hence bring open access to the researcher. That way, we would bring open access to the natural habitat of researchers. They are not to be bothered that they should change anything, at least not for the time being, and have the effect that not the researcher shall change, but the publishing system, and in particular, the underlying business model. Against this background, we propose the initiative OA 2020 as a solution. We believe that open access on a large scale, meaning to move beyond our current 15% that we have to levels of way above 50% quickly and as close to 100 as we can get. The only way to accomplish this is if we change the business model of the existing journals and leave the subscription system behind. And with that, and this is a careful message also that we are giving also to the publishers, we want to be disruptive to the cash flow in the system, to the transactions that are where our money is transacted. We don't want to destroy the publishing process itself. This is not a declaration of war against the publishers. And this is not based on the naivety that we can just establish publishing platforms and do the publishing ourselves, as we heard from Bernard Rentier. I would just want to remind you, we have archive and repository where people not only deposit in those fields close to 100%, and the content is also being accessed and read and digested. And still, the journals that exist on top of archive content still happen to thrive, and many of them are among the most expensive journals. So, and no effective quality control mechanism was ever established on top of archive. It has been debated for 20 years, but no major initiative ever came out of this theoretical concept. And why, after 15 years of open access movement and thinking about this, why should now 2017 be the year where we start with something very hopeful along those lines? For me, this is a recipe to move slowly from 15% maybe to 17, 18 or something, but we will get stuck very soon, and it doesn't leave any of the economic pressure on the library budget, because that's a different side. We have to combine these worlds. So, open access is based on the principle that we, as research community, hold the key to success. When you think about it, we believe, and this is based on a thorough analysis, that is the ultimate key to success is in the hands of our institutions, and this is our budget, and in particularly the acquisition budgets of the libraries worldwide. There is so much money crossing the tables from every year, and we have the power to make our spending decisions. This is the opposite of getting trapped. This is to develop a plan and to come up with demands, and we can drive open access into the system. And the starting point of this initiative was the publication of our white paper 2 years ago on this transformation of the system. And there was this empirical evidence that there is enough money in the system. So this is to remind you and everybody else, through the subscription system, we pay as much as $5,000 per article that's been transacted. This is the average. This is enormous money. And this is a slide that represents the economic figures from our white papers 2 years ago. And these figures have not a single time been challenged. The STM Publisher Association, Elsevier, all the major publishers have said, sometimes in the public, at least in closed meetings when they sat with us, that these figures are true. They cannot be challenged. So this is the spending level, and this is all published money, published data. You can read the annual STM reports. They gave the figure of $10 billion that's been transacted through the journal subscriptions worldwide. And the 2 million articles, that's also a frequently referred to figure, and then you can do the calculation of the mathematics, and you can convert into euros or US dollars or whatever currency you prefer. And when you look at the evidence what open access publishing costs, then we used it's more than an educated guess, it's also building on evidence, and you will see a slide in a moment that gives you this evidence that a value of 2,000 euros as an average worldwide is probably in the upper range that we can expect after a global flip. And to just re-engineer from there with the 2 million articles, you can see that there is certainly enough money in the system to comfortably pay for making all our results of scholarly communication open access, and even have room for improving some of the services, etc., or do something else with the money. So the essence is that we think the research organizations worldwide are in a situation where they can see light at the end of the tunnel and change their tactics to achieve a new robustness in their relationship with the publishers. So our message is, we don't think that we need any new mandates for researchers. I mean, of course, if institutions prefer to do this, we regard this as complementary, but this is not a route to a large-scale success in a short time. We need a mandate for our money. We need to take informed and robust spending decisions, and then we think we can accomplish a flip of the system within only a few years. The emblematic year 2020 is not an accident. We believe that we can accomplish something and reach a point of irreversibility, a point of no return already by 2020. It will not be fully accomplished, of course, because there's a long tail and etc. and processes need to be re-engineered. It will not be over by 2020. Okay, this animation that you will see next is really to show you what's the key exercise at hand. The left-hand column, the big thing, is supposed to represent the global subscription spending that all the libraries together put on the table. On the right-hand side, you see our small share of open access. And by the way, in the SDM report, you can see that for 14% of the market share, the costs or the revenues are only 4%. So that already tells you something, that open access will be much less cost-intensive in the end than the current system is. And the exercise at hand is that we have to take all our efforts and energies in the libraries, in the research councils, in the top management level of the university to see this and to work towards shifting the budgets from the left side and with the budgets also together the journals as such, and flip everything over to the right-hand side, and so that only perhaps a residual category in the end will be left. Wherever there are healthy regional markets, I mean, there's no need to go about it, but where the big money sits, where the big profits are being made, this is where the change has to happen quickly, rapidly, and radically. In order to go about, and this is a message particularly for the library community here, we need to develop better skills in analyzing the data. We need more data than we typically do at the libraries. And what we need to know is we must know more about our publication data in our own institutions, in a specific region, like the territory where a consortium would be responsible for, or within an entire country. So the total output, in particularly differentiating by the corresponding author share, the publisher distribution, the pattern of the past years, how these are changing, is there a publisher emergent, does something happen, etc. And this, as I said, on an institutional or country or regional level. And also the finances, the finance data, whether it's APC or the subscription data, need to be more thoroughly analyzed. This all has to be brought together. So, and I will give you some examples here, but only relatively quickly. Together with our white paper 2 years ago, we published a data paper with all the publications worldwide of all countries, including the corresponding author shares. So these were the data at that time. And it's I want to draw your attention to this bottom line here, where you can see that the corresponding author share for Germany in 2014 is at 67%. It came down from 74 10 years before. This is not something negative. It's just an indication that research tends to get more and more international, more collaborative across the borders. So, and that means in terms of the cost expectation, cost modeling, cost scenarios for Germany, this is the relevant share of articles, not our 100% that we would have to calculate with. And you can see the calculation exercise, this number of corresponding author papers times whatever you think is a reasonable APC assumption. When we say APC, we have been charged for our campaign very often that we were kind of addicted to APCs. We use this here because we needed a currency that everything can be converted to, and it has to be money. If you engage in a cooperative model like Scope 3 or Knowledge on Ledge or some others that are emerging at the moment in the last months or a few years, then of course there is not that one-to-one relationship that easily, and you need a currency that you can use to calculate everything. But we support other mechanisms as well. Here you see the same data for South Africa, same pattern. The corresponding author share went down, so I think this is healthy, a healthy indicator for South Africa. Also, South African research is not encapsulated, only done in the country, but there's a lot of international collaboration, and these would be the equivalent calculations. We don't know, I don't know the spending levels in your country. This is what you know much better, and this would be your task to make such calculations. Monitoring open access costs in this respect is a key exercise, and this is a graph that we have done ourselves at the MPDL team to really monitor the cost distribution of pure open access journals. Sometimes they are journals from commercial publishers, so it's not only pure open access publishers. And the journals that you see here are all very relevant journals. They have a high impact factor or attract a large number of publications. So we were not looking for only cheaper ones and that would make a nice chart here. We looked really for a true representation of the high-end spectrum of the publication market. And you can see the clustering around it. The red bar, this is where we operate on that price range with the current subscription system that we have. And you can see that the clustering is much, much lower. And we think this yellow corridor is a very realistic and likely corridor where we will see the price, average prices to end up with. And average, of course, means that this is built by the extremes on the lower part and on the higher part. And you can see Nature here. Nature, this is the only presumed APC. So we pretended Nature were open access, and this is just an amount of money that has been mentioned quite often, that it will cost at least 20,000 euros, blah, blah, blah. All the others are real figures, empirically based figures as they are at the moment. And Nature was just because we wanted to have an outlier here. And even when you see this outlier, you can see it's balanced out. You must not be afraid of outliers. When you look at the demographics in the country, your average age is not dictated by the few people that are more than 100 years old. Your average age is dictated by where the generations or the years with the strong birth years, or how it's being called in English, are centered around. So and this is the extremes don't inform the average very much. Then there are initiatives that really work on creating evidence and transparency to and already stimulate an open market situation that we will need for an open access environment. And I take the Open APC initiative out. I only have this slide here. I don't go into the details, but if you have not seen it, I invite you to go into it, because it's really a cool thing. And several countries, or many institutions from several countries, have already started to contribute. Recently, Harvard joined, and we have from the UK. It was initiated in Germany, but there are Austrian, Dutch, and many other institutions. You can filter by country, by institution, etc., and by year you can generate really a nice number of reports, and you always see also the average there. So and this is something that is open for further participation. If you go into this, and here in South Africa, the communities, I would highly recommend and invite you to think about contributing. It's easy to upload the data, and you get even enhanced data back because it's been run through Crossref, and if you only have a DOI with the price number, it feeds back the full bibliographic information, which you typically don't even get on the APC invoices themselves. So, the question how to get involved, how libraries and consortia leaders can get involved. Well, on our campaign site, away2020.org. I mean, we list 2 instruments at this point in time. There's a political document. It's called the Expression of Interest, and it has received 84 signatories to date. The campaign site was launched in March last year, and you can see that the number, the consortia that have signed up for this initiative. So it would be good to take this message home if you think that this is a proper way of thinking and acting, and raise awareness at your home institution and see whether we can enlarge the number of signatories from South Africa. So far, it's SANLiC alone. And the second document, and this is a living document that's going to be updated whenever there is something new to tell. This is the roadmap document, and this gives practical advice and example of how to proceed, what can be done at a local level. And no surprise, it starts, the first recommendation would really be to improve your data analytics. And what's also needed, consolidate subscription and open access responsibility under one management and budget. So the worst thing we can do is, and this is what gets us trapped perhaps, is if we leave open access and all the costs associated outside the responsibility of those people who control the library acquisition budget. That is the key insight that people have to understand. And from there, take your publisher relations to a new level. So you will not rock the world in the first round, but if you set your targets, you can make strong improvements, and there will, a network is in the process of being formed worldwide. Best practice can be shared, connect to the community, and this will help you also to get stronger and more robust in your own publisher interaction. Yes, this is maybe a little repetition. I mean, this is the first thing here on the top. The starting point is to combine the subscription logic, read access with open access rights in one and the same comprehensive license agreement. And this is the key element that librarians have to understand. This is, and from there, once you do this, you know what you have to do, and this is where you can develop yourself out of the trap if you perceive to be trapped by your current licensing agreements. And if that was not enough to well, I don't know whether I was able to convince you, but to get you at least think about this, I want to alert you to yet another argument. And this doesn't come from within open access, it comes from some other developments that we can observe. I mean, the Sci-Hub, as it hit the media at the beginning of last year, it was really also an eye-opener to me. And in particular, the article by John Bohannon in Science Magazine in April last year helped me to see something very clearly. I mean, when he had access to the log files of Sci-Hub, he could show that it's not the usage, the heavy usage does not come from the remote parts of the world where there is no access. It's not Iran and North Korea alone that love Sci-Hub. It's really also the most privileged part of the world, the richest research institutions, the Harvards and the Max Plancks of the world that also go in large numbers to Sci-Hub. And that, in that respect, I think Sci-Hub holds really an important lessons both for the libraries and the publisher, because this is the system obviously is not wanted anymore. It's a deteriorating system, and from the two sides, the publishers and the libraries desperately try to stabilize something that deserves to collapse. So I think when you look at it clearly, I mean, the subscription system was the answer to a time when distribution was the challenge. We live in a time where distribution is just not the challenge anymore, not to the slightest extent. So Sci-Hub exposes the nakedness of the subscription system. And it reminded me of The Emperor's New Clothes, the fairy tale by Hans Christian Andersen. And to me, Sci-Hub is like the little girl that finally puts the finger towards the emperor and calls the emperor naked. And it's just something, yeah, that we cannot deny. And I think we have to ask ourselves, can we really continue to do business as usual now that we know this, now that we cannot close our eyes again anymore? So I come to the end of this presentation, read the signs of the times, and I go through this very quickly. I think when you open your eyes, when you are a keen observer of the scenery, you can already see that the landscape is in the process of being structured. So there is the Sci-Hub shock, and it's still a legitimation of the current system. There are plans out there, a rational and plan for the large-scale transformation. There is the empirical evidence that has never been challenged, that there is enough money already in the system. We have more and more data evidence building up to be able to make more informed, more precise cost modeling. The APC evidence is collected and documented. There are political initiatives, OA 2020 foremost, but also others particularly in Europe at this point in time, but also other countries are trying to advance. And I've been invited to several countries. It's not the first time that I stay in an audience in a country where I don't know the details, where I'm not very knowledgeable, where I don't. Well, in your case, you also speak English, but I've been in countries where I don't even understand the language. Yes, and there is a roadmap with practical steps. There are emerging standards in workflow issues, etc. I will have another presentation on OA 2020 tomorrow morning. Today's was really meant to tell you the principle, what we want to accomplish, and tomorrow it's going to be a bit more practical in the sense how we think we can accomplish. I want to share with some data with you, so it will not be repetition of what I said today, but it will be an additional approach. So my last slide and last animation, we think it's really time to unplug the system. We have to remove our money from the subscription system and need to discontinue the subscription system in order to find new ways to finance the publishing services that are wanted and needed in a 21st century digital research environment. Thank you very much for your attention.